Rob here at etrailer.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Roadmaster Crossbar-Style base plate kit with removable arms. And here's what it's going to look like once we have it installed. And our base plate is going to give us that secure connection point so we can hook our tow bar up to our Sonic and safely flat tow it down the road. It's also going to spread that towing force across the front end so we're not putting so much strain and stress on the front suspension. Now when we're flat towing, we obviously need a spot for our tow bar to hook up to, but let's face it, nobody wants this big black thing hanging out the front of their car and distracting from the looks of it. Well, Roadmaster took that into effect, and we can actually pull these out when we're not using them. There's a small ring on the inside of the tab. If we pull outward on it, we can rotate the arm, and then we can pull it completely out. Just that pull tab makes it really easy to get in and out. And then to put it back in, simply just make sure that pull tab is on top, push it in, it'll push that ring out, and we can rotate it, it'll lock it into place. Once the arms are removed, you can see how clean of a look it's going to have. The tabs are going to be recessed back a little bit. Now, the safety cable connection points are going to stick out, but it does have that black powder coat, so it kind of blends in with the grill down here. Now, the name Roadmaster gave this base plate the crossbar style is because it's going to use a quick disconnect, which is going to be a separate bar that's going to mount directly to the tabs, and it's going to span going all the way across. Now, it is going to be a separate piece, but it's going to make it a lot quicker where we can just lift the bar up and unhook our tow bar and be on the road really quickly. And like most base plates, we are going to have a really easy to access safety chain connection point. It's going to be just to the inside of where our drawbar is, one on each side of the license plate here. And as you can see, we got plenty of room to get our hooks on. We're not going to have to worry about damaging or scratching anything close to the grill. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that our other components here are electrical, and our breakaway switch, they're not included with the kit. This is just the rest of our flat tow setup with our braking system and our wiring. Now, our Roadmaster base plate is going to be compatible with quick disconnect as well as all Roadmaster tow bars and some other manufacturers' tow bars with adapters that are sold separately. And you can find those here at etrailer.com. Now, I would like to give you one measurement, and that's going to be from the ground to our attachment point on our base plate. And that's going to be right about 15 inches. Now, you want to make sure you measure from the ground to the inside top edge of the receiver tube opening on your motorhome so you can check those two measurements and make sure you have a nice level towing setup. And if you have too much of a difference, we're going to need to get a high-low adapter. Now, when you're looking for a base plate for your Sonic so you can safely flat tow it, there are a lot of different options out there. But I really like the Roadmaster base plates, one, because they're pretty simple to install and they require a lot less modification than the other ones do. Now, clearly we are going to have to trim a little bit on the grill, but behind the fascia and everything else, there's not a whole lot of cutting or drilling that we're going to have to do, and it's just a fairly simple install. Now, Roadmaster does make a direct connect, which we're not going to have to worry about that crossbar or the quick disconnect on there, and that really is one of my favorite ones because you just hook your tow bar directly up to it. But our Roadmaster Crossbar style base plate is actually the same base plate, it's just the arms are different. So really it's just going to depend on if you want that quick disconnect or if you want to hook your tow bar directly up to the base plate. Now keep in mind, this is only going to be one component of a complete safe flat tow setup. For a whole setup, you're going to need a base plate, a tow bar wiring, a braking system, and safety cables. And specifically for our Sonic, we're also going to need a fuse bypass because there are several fuses that we're going to have to pull underneath the hood and inside so we can safely flat tow our Sonic. And also, finally, a stoplight switch so we can get the monitor light hooked up on our braking system. And you can find all of these components here at etrailer.com. But now that we've seen how nice our base plate looks installed, let's go ahead and put it on together. To start out, we want to open up our hood, and then right above the grill here, we're going to have this plastic section. And it's going to be attached using a lot of these plastic fasteners as well as some bolts. So you want to grab a 10mm socket, and we're going to pull all the bolts out of the top here. Then we're going to have 3 plastic pushpin fasteners on either side of the latch. Take a flat blade screwdriver, we'll come underneath the small notch that's in the pushpin, and that'll relieve some of the tension. Pop that center section up, then we can come underneath the base and pop the base out. And we're going to repeat that for all the remaining pushpins that we have. Now we're going to move to the front wheel well. Now it will help if you turn the wheel opposite of the side you're on. So we're on the driver's side, so just turn the wheel all the way to the right. If we look in the wheel well here, we'll have 3 fasteners holding it in place. So we'll grab a T20 Torx bit and we'll pull those 3 screws out. Now if we come right to where our fascia meets the fender and we look up inside the wheel well liner, there's a small notch that's cut out and we can see another bolt that's going vertically. We're going to take our T25 Torx bit and we're going to pull that bolt out. And if you need to, you can just pull back the wheel well liner back a little bit, that way you can have access to it easier. But now that these are removed, we're going to move to the other side and remove all those as well. Now if we move on to the very front, we're going to have this skid plate that's going to be right underneath. Now it's going to be held on by 2 bolts on each side, so we can grab a 13mm socket and pull those out. Now we're also going to have 3 of these Torx bits that are holding it in place as well. There'll be 1 on each end and then 1 in the center. So we'll grab that T20 Torx bit and we'll pull those out. And there's also going to be 1 push pin holding it in place. So we'll grab a flat blade screwdriver and we'll pull that push pin out just like we did with the ones on top. And we'll pull the shield down and set it aside for right now. Now underneath that shield, we'll find this support here that's going to be attaching our fascia to everything else. We'll have 2 bolts that are holding it in place as well as a hex bolt towards the front. We're going to remove these 2. So we'll grab our T20 Torx bit, pull them out. Then if we move towards the outside, we can see where our fascia is going to be attached again at this little triangle tab here, and then again at the very corner of the fascia, attaching it to the painted section right here. And the bolts out here are going to be a T15, so you want to make sure you grab the appropriate size. We're going to remove the other side as well. Then that small bolt that's holding each one of these brackets in place, we'll grab a 7mm socket and pull that out as well. Once we have the bolt pulled out, we'll pull the bracket out and we'll take the other side out as well. At this point, it's a good idea to grab an extra set of hands because we're going to pull the fascia off. You want to start where the fender meets the fascia. We'll grab the edge and we'll start pulling outward, and that'll release the clips. And we're just going to be working our way towards the center. Now once you do get towards the grill area, right at the corner here, you kind of want to lift up to get it past this little keeper. We're just going to be working our way out until the fascia comes loose. Now before you pull too far away, you do want to disconnect your fog lights if you have any. So we'll push in on that tab. Little gray tab we're going to squeeze and pull back, and that'll release it, and then we'll push down on the brown tab and pull the connector out. And we can set our fascia aside where it's not going to get damaged. Now if you have another connector over on the passenger side, you want to make sure it's disconnected as well. Again, just push in on the tab and separate the connectors. With the fascia removed, we're going to have this air shield that's going to be attached to the intercooler here. We're going to pull that out, so we're going to remove the 2 push pins that are holding it in place on each side. So these are going to work just like the other ones. Just come underneath the center section, pop it out, and then we can pull out the base. Now if we come just the outside and down a little bit, we'll have our lower bumper structure here. This will be held on by 3 bolts on each side. So we're going to grab a 13mm socket, and we're going to pull all 3 of those bolts out on each side. Now I like to leave one just a little loose on one side, that we don't have to worry about it falling down. Then we'll remove the other side. So with all the bolts removed, we'll pull the section out and set it aside. Now that everything's nice and loose and we have room to move that shield away from the intercooler, we're going to need to trim out this section. Basically, if you come to that raised area, we come straight down and then cut over, that's the area we're going to be trimming out. Now, if you are using any kind of power tools, you want to be extremely careful because it is very close to the intercooler. But I'm going to be using a pair of tin snips, so we don't have to worry about nicking anything. I'm going to just take my time. Once you have that area trimmed out, we can go ahead and remove the shield. Maybe a little bit of a tight fit, but what you can do is you can lift up and slide it over to the side. We should be able to pull that entire section out, and we'll set it aside. Now on either side of our intercooler, we're going to have our hoses attached to it. You want to grab a flat blade screwdriver, and there's a metal band that's going all the way around that hose. You want to take your screwdriver, come underneath that metal clip, and you want to pry up and out. And you can see how it releases that right there. That way we can, once we get it released enough, we can slide the hose off and disconnect it from the intercooler. Now whenever you do go to pull the hose off, you want to make sure that these clips are all the way out. So if we look on the inside, on the back here, that's what's actually keeping it in place. You want to make sure that both of those clips are fully extended out. It'll make it a lot easier to get it off. We're going to go ahead and pull the other one off as well. Now on the driver's side of our intercooler, we're going to have an 8mm bolt that's holding it in place. So we can grab an 8mm socket and pull that out. We'll move over to the passenger side. And instead of a nut holding it in place, it's going to be this pinch tab. So you just want to grab each side, squeeze them together, and then I'll allow our intercooler to roll forward. Then we can slowly work it out of the little channel that it's sitting in. It just has these small tabs that sit in this channel. And we're going to set this aside for now where it won't get damaged. Now in order for our main receiver brace to fit in place, we're going to have to trim this little flange off to where it's even with the bottom of our bumper. Now I'm going to be using an angle grinder just so I can make quick work out of it, but you want to cut as close as you can to the very bottom of the bumper so it's going flush straight across, and we're going to lose this tab down here. Now once you have the piece trimmed off, it's not a bad idea to come back with some spray paint. You want to cover up any areas that has exposed metal on it. That way hopefully it'll prevent any kind of rust or corrosion from building up. We're going to go ahead and cut the same way on the other side as well. Now we can get ready to put our base plate in place, but we want to make sure that we have at least one piece of hardware on each side so it'll hold itself up. So we're going to grab one of the long bolts out of our kit. Now you do want to put a small amount of red Loctite on all the bolts. Let's put a little bit on the threads. Then our bolt, we're going to follow it up with a split lock washer. Then we'll take a 1/2-inch flat washer, slide it over. Now this bolt, if we look at our frame rail here that's attaching our bumper structure, we're going to have two holes that are going to be going through the bottom all the way through the beam. The one closest to the front of the vehicle, we're going to drop our bolt from the top into the hole. And it'll pass all the way down through the bumper beam. And we'll lift our base plate into position. And then once that's there, we're going to follow it up with a flat washer and a hex nut. And that's going to be the same combination on each side in this location, just so we can get it up and hold itself in place. Now with that extra set of hands, we're going to lift our base plate up. You kind of want to rotate it in so you can get behind the bumper here. And we're going to lift it up to where it's nice and flat against the bumper structure. Then we'll take our bolt, we'll drop it down through the top. Make sure that it comes down through our base plate. And then we'll take the flat washer and hex nut. We want to make sure we get this at least hand tight. Again, one on each side. That way the base plate will hold itself up, and we can work on getting the rest of the hardware in place. Now for the fold that's going towards the back, that's in our bumper structure, we're going to take another one of our long bolts, same combination of hardware. We're going to pass the bolt down through, again making sure it goes all the way through and it lines up with our base plate. Now, you may need to kind of wiggle stuff around to get that bolt to come through. If you need to, you can kind of loosen up your other bolts. There's still a little bit of play and everything. And instead of a nut washer, we're going to have a nut plate. We're going to make sure that the flat section is facing up. We'll just get it lined up with our bolt. And it'd probably be easiest to start it if you just hold the nut plate and push the bolt down until we can get it started and everything going through. With both bolts started, we'll come back with a 3/4 inch socket and we'll tighten up that rear one. We can grab a 3/4 inch wrench. We'll hold the nut on the bottom and tighten up the bolt on top. I want to repeat that for the other bolts on the other side. Now on the bottom here, we're going to have one more attachment point on each side. Now there's a hole in our base plate. There's a small hole that goes through here, but we're going to need to get through all the way to the back side. So I'm going to take a 1/2 inch drill bit. We're going to use our base plate as a template, and we're going to drill all the way until it comes out through the back side here. Once you have the hole drilled, we're going to grab one of the long bolts, we'll pass it through, make sure it comes all the way out the other side. And we're going to take one of our large plate washers, we'll slide it over the bolt. We'll take a lock washer, and then finally secure it down with a hex nut. And with this side in place, we're going to drill out the other side and use the exact same combination of hardware. And finally, we'll snug up the lower bolts as well. I'm going to come back with a torque wrench. I'm going to torque all my hardware down to the specified amount in the instructions. You want to make sure you repeat that for all your remaining hardware. We can go ahead and grab our intercooler now. Now you want to make sure that it is facing the right direction. So if we're looking at it, the little GM symbol should be on the driver's side with the round hole. And on the other side, we're going to have that square hole where it goes into that pinch tab. Now I will let you know it's going to be a little bit of a tight fit to get everything in here, because if we just try to rotate it in, you'll see that that round tab is going to hit the base plate right here. So I'm just going to kind of sneak it behind the base plate. Make sure that you can get your tab lined up. And get it in that little notch section. And we can come to the other side, bring it in, make sure this side lines up. Should be able to get them in that channel and then rotate it into position and put all the fasteners back in place. And we can take that bolt and we can reinstall it. Now I did find it is easier if you take a little piece of paper towel. It'll hold the bolt inside the socket, because otherwise you're going to have a real hard time trying to feed it through without dropping it. We can reconnect our intercooler hoses. You want to make sure that it goes all the way on. You see there's a little notch there. You want to make sure it's pressed all the way in place. And then you want to make sure that both clips are pressed in all the way and they're not sticking up. You go ahead and pull on it and double check that it's locked in place. We'll put the other one on the other side as well. And at this point we can loosely reinstall all the bolts that are holding our lower bumper section in place. Then we can come back with that 13mm socket and tighten up all the bolts. Then we can put the air dam back in place. Once you have all your pieces back in, then you can put your fascia back on. But keep in mind, we are going to have to trim a spot out for the arms to come through the lower grill. But if you're going to be adding wiring, a braking system, or any other components to your flat toe setup, now would be the time to do it, because it's going to make it a lot easier to route any of those wires around here rather than trying to go behind the fascia. So that's what we're going to do. But now that we have everything installed, we're going to go ahead and hold our fascia up, see exactly where we need to trim out on the grill, and then we can reinstall the fascia. Now that we have our fascia back on, you can see exactly where we had to cut. Right where the arms and the tabs are going to go in, I just cut an oversized hole that we had enough room to get everything in there, but you can see how nice and clean it's going to look when the arms are removed. Then we can grab the arm. You want to make sure that that pin is on top. We'll insert it into our base plate. We're going to press in until that tab comes back. Then we'll just rotate it until it locks into position. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. With everything back in place, we can close the hood, hook up to our motorhome, and hit the road.